Hi everyone, thank you for being here today, and I hope you all enjoy watching and listening to what I'm about to talk about today. I want to talk about a topic that affects so many of us, whether you are a student, a parent, or even someone who cares about the education of our country and the future of it. I am talking about the rising cost of tuition and why it keeps increasing, because for so many of us, we all work very hard in college and our family's very proud of us, and everyone's very excited what's ahead when they first get into college. But the tuition bill arrives and it ends up being very high, and everyone's, I bet, very shocked. As a college student myself, I relate to this, and I'll be honest, I get worried a lot as well because I see tuition going up every year, and I hear my friends constantly stressing about student debt. Especially with student debt only growing, I've seen my friends struggle to make ends meet, and I felt the pressure myself and my family members have as well. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that as well, because this isn't just a little issue, but it's something many of us are living through right now. So I feel like that's very important to understand what's really happening and what we can do about it and why it's happening. Because personally, I know people who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to stay enrolled in the college they're at. It's frustrating and it's stressful, but it's also unfair to everybody. One of the many reasons, and one of the major reasons behind this crisis, is reduced state funding for higher education. Over the last 2 decades, state funding for public universities has declined by more than 25%. And according to ABC News, the cost of college has risen by over 570% in the last 30 years. That is very shocking. Can you believe that? And that means that public universities are getting less and less support from the very states that are supposed to help them educate our young minds. To put this into perspective, just in 2020 alone, state funding dropped by over $10 billion nationwide. That is a lot of money, and that means that they have to find other ways to make ends meet, so they end up relying more on tuition revenue to cover their costs. When public universities receive less funding from the state, the burden shifts on to the students and their families, and that is very stressful to the students and families and guardians and everyone who's involved, because the cost of education is not just about learning, but a financial struggle has become a very big part of it, because people aren't just looking at the learning anymore, but they have to consider the cost of it all as well, because the average student loan debt for a graduate is over $30,000, and student loan debt in the U.S. has reached over 1.77 trillion in the U.S., and that is a huge weight to carry into the real world. And for many people, the debt that they carry off from college can take decades to pay off. This funding gap is a very important factor in the rising of tuition, because it makes it harder for families to afford higher education. So what can we do about this? I learned from the articles and videos that I watched, I learned that we can advocate for better funding for our public universities. I also learned that we can urge our state to prioritize education in their budgets, and most importantly, I feel like we can make our voices be heard. I feel like that's the most important part, that people continue to learn about this, because this is a big part of our lives, so I feel like everyone needs to learn about it. Now let's transition to another factor. Another major factor in driving tuition costs is rising administrative and operational expenses. It is not just about the classroom anymore, but universities are becoming more complex with larger administrative staff. Many people might not realize this, but as universities grow, I know I didn't realize this at first, but as universities grow, so do the costs associated with running them. There are more departments, more staff, and unfortunately with all of this, it means more salaries to pay. So it's not uncommon for universities to invest in new faculties, new technology, especially nowadays, and amenities that really attracts students. And while this can enhance the educational experience, it also adds up to the overall cost of running the college. Universities also build luxury dorms, and all of this is really great and can attract students in a brochure, but they all come with a price, and that price is usually passed down to students, driving tuition even higher. And we can't forget about the cost of maintaining these faculties. That's also very expensive, and it is a continuous cycle of spending that ultimately falls onto the shoulders of those who are trying to get their degree. We also need to consider the rising cost of healthcare and benefits for the faculty and staff. As the cost of healthcare rises, universities often have to increase their budget to cover these expenses. Again, this financial burden gets transferred onto the students and the families, making it very stressful. Through increased tuition rates, while the US and the UK have higher average student debt, countries like Germany and Denmark, they offer affordable education options, resulting in a lot lower student debt. Australia and Canada fall somewhere in the middle of that. And also in many European countries, higher education is either free or much lower. It makes it less expensive compared to the US. For example, Germany has usually free tuition. So compared to all of these, the US is very expensive. And we have a lot more debt compared to other countries. Now, I understand that these are very complex issues and we cannot expect immediate results, but we can start by having the conversations about these topics, and we can engage with our university administrators to understand where our tuition dollars are going. We can also push for transparency in budgeting and spending. We can demand for accountability. Another thing we can do is advocate for affordable options. A couple of affordable options is community college and also trade schools. Those are very good options. So we should celebrate those colleges, encourage students to explore all their options. In conclusion, the rising cost of tuition is a big issue, and that also does not have a one-size-fits-all solution. And we've seen how reduced funding, rising administrative costs, and a demand for more amenities have combined to make college less affordable. Each of these factors, they play a big role in the overall increase in tuition costs. From reduced state funding to rising administrative costs, there are many factors at play, but I feel like we do have a chance to make a difference, and I've also learned that we can be part of the conversation and let us push for change in our education system, and we have to work together to make higher education more affordable to everyone. And especially because education is not just about the individual, but it's about the future of our society, and we have to consider how we value education and to advocate for better funding, and that starts with having a conversation and learning about it. So thank you. I hope you all enjoyed.